them as you start working on it, hopefully, from in the coming week. So our today's session is going to talk to us about credit card frauds, and that being the most common. We picked that up to talk about it today. What is it that the banks do with regards to credit card fraud? We'll also be looking at a little bit of descriptive, predictive, prescriptive analytics on fraud with a database. And at the end, I will show you, a fraud strategy of a bank and what it does as part of its, corporate strategy to help prevent and detect frauds in a timely manner. So that's our session 2. And let's move on to talking about now, in general, guys, the skills of collaborative or leadership is not so important nowadays. It's a given. What is very important nowadays is logical or critical thinking. And this critical thinking skill helps you decipher whether this variable should be included in the fraud and risk model. And if it is it working for us or not? If not working, you got to go back, review, and change it. If it's working, then obviously you want to make sure that the variable is helping achieve your objective. And in our particular case, unlike most data analytics areas, in our particular case, the objective is pretty straightforward, which is to detect and prevent frauds. So people can use a lot of ways of achieving the so-called fraud and risk analytics to decide whether there are anomalies, whether there are outliers in the fraud or not. If so, it becomes essential for you to look at whether you want to understand the data, make sure that the data is relevant before you want to work ahead with any data sets. So guys, 2 kinds of importance is what you now want to look at, and your any kind of analytics, including fraud and risk analytics. 2 things: your data should be reliable and your data should be valid. What do we understand when we say the word reliable? So what is reliable data? Anybody? Or when is data said to be reliable? Don't say when it is not reliable. Data is reliable when it is yes, when absolutely correct, Rohit. Data is reliable when it is error-free, correct. And when is it valid? Guys, discourage you from putting into the chat. Since we've taken the effort of making it as a Zoom session, interactive, I would request you to speak up, then just type in a word, yeah? So when is it said to be valid? It is reliable when it is error-free. It is valid when it is answering the objective. And answering the objective becomes very, very important. And in our case, what is the objective, people? In our case, what is the objective?
To detect and prevent the fraud.
Correct. To detect and prevent the fraud. And that is as good as hard-coded. In business analytics, you may want to find out what the objective is. Is it customer-driven, growth strategy? Is it operations-driven? Is it financial? What is it? But in this case, that part is pretty given, and that is to detect and prevent or mitigate frauds. And what you need to understand is what are the variables that will help me detect and prevent frauds. And therefore, all the variables which help you do that, you need to consider in your model. What you don't have it, you don't need to consider in your model. And that is very important. No nice to know variable, always need to know variables becomes important when you look at your fraud and risk model. Otherwise, what happens is, let's add this variable, let's consider it. This variable might add some value to us later on. And in that process, what we do is we inflate the set of variables, and then we are very difficult to isolate what helps us contribute to understanding of fraud and risk. Yeah, so very, very important. Our variables should be both reliable and valid. Okay. So when you are cleaning your data, also the rules apply as much as it applies when you're analyzing and presenting your data, that it should be both reliable as well as valid. So how does the fraud and risk model look like? A fraud and risk model looks like pretty much like this. So you have pre-processing your data, then you have analyzing your data, and last and finally, you're post-processing your data. So overall, if you look at it, you have about 7 stages of the data process or data of fraud analytics model. What are some of the observations that you can make from this model? There are realities of analytics also, but what can you make out of these here? Pre-processing, analytics, and post-processing.
The amount of effort which is required in pre-processing is much bigger. I mean, we need to get to the clean data, then only we'll be able to do the analytics correctly.
Correct. Now, much bigger, you're in a fraud analytics class. So how much bigger, Rohit?
60-70%.
So that's about 2/3, isn't it? Yeah, the effort required should be 1/3, but it's 2/3. And that is one of the biggest pain points of an analyst, including a fraud and risk analyst, is you have to spend a lot of time to make sure that your data is reliable. Okay, no matter what technology you use, unless and until the data at source is reliable, it is only going to be garbage in equals to garbage out. So what does pre-processing entail? Pre-processing entails the first part is identify the business problem. Now, in the world of analytics, this is much bigger a problem because we only look at the tip of the iceberg and not the true problem. Thankfully, in the fraud and risk analytics framework, this is very given, which is the business problem is anything that you do ultimately should help reduce or mitigate frauds. So that in that sense, identify business problem is a straightforward issue. This is a bigger issue, identify data sources. And these are primary, secondary, structured, unstructured, and therefore it only helps you to be a little more vigilant about what kind of source do you want to use. So when you pick up your data sources, what are you going to look at? Validity, obviously, you must make sure that your data source is valid. And valid to what? Valid to the fact that it's helping you answer the business objective. So identify the business problem, identify the data sources, whether it is valid or invalid. Select the data. What do you mean by select the data?
Select the variables which are required for the model.
Again, yes, select the data, is select the variables, and the important aspect there is, are those variables available at that point of time or not? Are they dated? Are they available? If your variable is not available, is there a proxy variable that you want to take into consideration? Suppose you want to take the credit rating of the segment that you're looking at, and there is no credit rating data available for the SME segment, for example. If there is no credit rating available, and that's the variable that you've chosen, what are the surrogate variables that you want to look at instead of that? Is it turnover? Is it number of employees? Is it industry served? Is it proposals converted? What is it that you want to look at? Yeah. And then then you get into the act of cleaning up the data, making sure that your data is reliable. Okay. If you want to recode, you may want to recode it also. If it's alphabetical data, maybe you want to convert it into numeric data. If it's alphanumerical, convert it into numerical again. If it's categorical, maybe you want to convert it into continuous variable because now you want to do something which is predictive modeling with it, and that requires continuous data as opposed to categorical data. So all these things are to be worked upon with regards to your with regards to your fraud and risk model, ensuring that the variables that you're looking at are both reliable and valid. Now you begin the task of doing your analytics, which is descriptive, predictive, or prescriptive analytics. And as you analyze your data, you will then interpret and make sure that you are interpreting and answering the objective, which is how to mitigate frauds. Clear? And this is an iterative process. It cannot be a one-time, once in a lifetime kind of thing. You need to iterate this process. And when will you iterate this process? When when there are new variables that you want to consider in your model because of environmental changes, or when you begin to wonder that your fraud and risk ratios are not going up, and therefore you want to look at the model one more time. So the frequency of looking at the model, unless regulatory, because if it's regulatory, then that variable has to be included. But other than that, look at this model at least once in 6 to 8 months. On a safer side, definitely look at it once a year. Yeah. Any questions, anybody, on the fraud and fraud analytics process model? So now, if you want to deploy people, obviously, if you want to deploy people, what is the kind of profile that you're going to select as you deploy these people? Now, in the past, as you can see, the two lines that you're seeing, close to ideal and too specialized, the fraud analytics team was only looking at a data steward who would pre-process the data, analyze it, but when it comes to interpretation and helping take a decision, that person would not be competent enough to do that, because not because they can't, but because they had a very poor understanding of the business. Hence, it's important that the requirement is not skewed on the technical side, but as you can see, the requirement is also there on the business or the communication side as well. So a very good understanding of the business is required, number one. Number two, a great understanding of how you communicate this to the end users or to the audience is also equally important, right? So ideally, this should be a team of two people, one who's technically strong. I did not say skew, but technically strong. And the other one is business strong or has a lot of business strength to understand the problem. And if this exists, then of course, it's going to be a good team to look at your fraud and risk model framework. Okay. What do you guys believe? Yeah. Do you think that you need do you think if you were to put together a fraud and risk team together, what would your emphasis be more on? A person who's analytically strong or a person who's business wise strong, business understanding strong? What would your priority be?
Both skills are important,
Both
and
skills are important.
both skills need to complement each other.
Okay, so Rohit, yeah, good point. But would you look at this to be in the same person?
No, probably different teams. Because
Yes,
analytical people may or may not be able to understand business perspective, and business people will focus on business rules or business policies. So they will not be technical experts or analytic experts.
right, right. And you think that is happening in the at the workplace?
Yes, yes. I
It is
mean,
happening.
I'm in a different domain, but then I've seen this multiple times working with the business stakeholders, saying that from their perspective, the business priorities would matter the most. But from
Correct.
the technical side of things, it's the technology and technicalities, and then somebody needs to connect those dots for it to
Correct.
be a successful venture.
Absolutely correct. And if it happens, it's great. But in the many cases, with hiring becoming so stringent, you're expecting the same person to deliver on both these in equal terms, and that becomes a challenge. Because while you have a technically strong person, you cannot expect that person to be business. If everybody did everything, then there was no specialization to be done. So ideally, it is a two-member team. One is much more stronger on the business acumen side, and the other person is much more stronger on the technical acumen side. And that's how the duo would work to be able to address the fraud and risk and any analytics of the organization as far as the business or the customer or the people or including fraud analytics is concerned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions, anybody? So this becomes important as you putting your fraud and risk framework together. The profile of the team becomes important and the model also becomes important. How ready are you with it? And one of the challenges we all face in our analytics world is that the biggest fight is to, have reliable or clean data. 8 out of 10 organizations are grappling with it. So when you have in your business planning forums, the first point that they talk about is we want to do a data cleanup exercise, and everybody says, wow, superb, correct, definitely. That's your point number one. By the time the entire discussion happens and the entire meeting goes through, that point number one, which was data is the most critical element, becomes, or data is the new oil, which is great. But that point of number one becomes number 10 because other things take more priority over this point. And that is the challenge. Then you talk about who will do this, and therefore a suboptimal job gets done, which is not correct, and therefore it is just a reactionary, knee-jerk reaction, basically, to work on the problem, and that problem will not yield the right results. Okay, and therefore garbage in equals to garbage out. So no matter how sophisticated of technology that you're using, if that technology, now why is machine learning in Python better? We want an ideal set of data, but in the absence of getting an ideal set of data, these are better tools and techniques, because through these tools and techniques, you can make sure that the trends that they have picked up are able to predict better results in the future, and therefore the prediction reliability becomes better because of these new emerging technologies that you have at your disposal. So coming to credit card fraud, which is the most happening fraud. This is the fraud that happens most because as we go paperless and the cashless and etc. less, it becomes essential that we look at this plastic to be able to make ourselves much more careful with regards to the fraud and risk that we are handling in this case. So a lot of individuals, they take a different kind of a credit card with a very smaller limit, and that is used for their online and for their other transactions that they want to work with. I don't know how many of you think, but if when a credit card company came to me and said, we've increased your credit limit, and it was good that they increased it, but I went back to them and I said, I don't want an increase in credit limit because it's only going to increase the risk as opposed to doing anything else. So a lot of us uh, either have multiple cards for multiple purposes, or some of us enjoy credit card increased limits, but some of us also want to work in a certain constraint just to protect ourselves from e-crimes that we are vulnerable to most of the time. So it obviously affects us all, and the incidence is very, very huge. US, of course, leads on to this. And if you look at these numbers that are predicted on credit card frauds, guys, it's expected to grow at double digit till 2025. And this is only spurred up more as we emerge out of the pandemic. 2016, if you see, US had 40% share of the global losses amounting to 9 billion US. Economic loss, corporate loss, employee morale, everything is at a loss with these kind of numbers that one has to play with credit card fraud. Fraud is also evolving with fraudsters getting much more sophisticated in what they do. And because they're getting much more sophisticated, what's also happening is the tools and techniques of how to prevent or detect a fraud is also becoming much more important to work at it. So if you are preparing a fraud and risk model, the first thing that you got to do, as has been told by most analysts, is you got to think like a fraudster. And hence, if you think like a fraudster, the first thing that you want to learn and do for your fraud model is how to hack the model or how to hack the system. And if that is foolproof, then you're kind of thinking about the T's and crosses that you will capture to make sure that your fraud model is much more comprehensive and much more robust. So let's look at this, email, this email that has come. It's obviously it is an email from a bank. I want you to tell me, is this a phishing email or not? Is everything okay in the email or is anything suspicious here? What do you think, guys?
Looks suspicious.
What elements are suspicious?
It's sounding like an attractive opportunity in terms of, first of all, saving up hundreds of dollars.
Okay.
And then that use our savings calculator. We don't know where this link is going to, because
Okay.
before clicking the link, we'll need to see whether it's from Chase Bank only. Otherwise,
Mhm.
it could be a fraudulent one.
Correct.
Um,
Okay.
and then generally when there are these
So,
things like this
no, so
offers
would you, so
expires,
sorry, would you open the link or would you just straight away delete
no,
the message today?
I'll right click on it and see where it is going in the
You
proper
will
place.
collect. Okay. You will collect. Okay.
And then whenever there is a time limit in the email saying that this offers expires, take quick action, those typically are the ones which are pushing you to take an action, right? So those are dangerous ones.
Okay. And therefore, you will be
Uh,
careful with this.
yes.
Okay. There are more comments on the chat, please. Anybody? Manmeet, let's hear it from you. Lots of click lucrative offers. So what you're going to get, you're going to fall prey or you're going to be more vigilant?
No, it definitely seems to be a phishing mail.
Its perception seems to be a
Phishing mail.
phishing mail. Okay. The questions are absolutely right. Now, suppose you click on the link and the link is genuinely from Chase Bank. Then what do you do?
I guess a preventive measure would be to just cross check with the. If you have an account with the Chase Bank, you can just cross
So
check
you
with the
need
bank.
not have an account. Yeah, you may have a credit card with the bank. That's it. Or it can come to you because it's saying transfer balances now. So good, guys. But when we check this email, this was found to be legitimate. Banks do send these kinds of emails to customers, prospects, as well as customers to transfer balances. And I'm glad you talk about, preventive measures and checks of going to the original site rather than just believing on it. And once you check the website, you should be 100% sure that this is a genuine website. Yeah. So after the checks are done, this email was found to be genuine. Okay. Now, what about this one?
This is definitely a phishing one, because if you see the status bar, it is actually signupaccount.com. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look like a
Mm-hmm.
PayPal .com site at all. But again, we'll have to be careful in terms of where this donate now link is
Is
going to,
going to.
or yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that link, careful, does not seem like a PayPal website. Okay. URL looks fishy, okay? Or not fishy or fishy?
It
Okay.
looks fishy, signupaccount.com.
It looks fishy, correct.
We'll also have to see where those sign up, login, and help links are going.
Where they're going, correct. Now, when UNICEF is doing such kind of an operation of gathering funds, do you think it will only use or tie up with one source, or will it have multiple sources?
Multiple sources.
Multiple sources. So it won't be that it's only PayPal, right? It'll have other sources of donating.
Yeah.
Okay. And that can also raise a question mark saying, what is the connection between one source and UNICEF? And then obviously all that you said, about URL not right, about the connections not right, about where it leads to not right. So when you do all these checks, obviously this is a phishing email. And with all the checks that you do, it was found that this is not a genuine email, but a fraudulent one.
Even we can check like this HTTPS, the secure link is not there.
Correct. It is no longer a secured link. That is a good point as well. That also adds to your investigation. Okay. Now, interestingly, people, today we have an auditor's mind, and that is good. The moment we look at something, our first thing is going to be questionable, and that's a great mind to have, rather than accepting everything. Say 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have started with a question mark. We would have done a question mark, but only in our fourth or fifth question that arisen, by which time the damage would have been done. But today, all of us rather are questioning it and then moving ahead. But however, whilst we are questioning it, because fraud is still happening, there are those weak moments. And the Reserve Bank of India, in its communication messages, is talking about it as to how people get duped with false SMSs that keep coming and how they need to be educated. And I think that's very good, because it's reaching down to town 3, town Cs, and also to rural areas of India where they need to be more vigilant about it. Okay. So what is my credit card life cycle? My credit card life cycle is as follows. It starts with you onboard a customer, you give them a welcome pack, you give them a credit card, etc. And then there are these account details, and these account details are pretty much in line with you issuing the credit card to the customer that you find genuine. You manage the customer, you observe their transactions, and once you observe their transaction, you obviously are seeing if there is an anomaly or not. Sometimes account maintenance, or as they also call it as KYC details and updates, is required, and that's what you do. At the end, either the credit card is cancelled because the customer wants to cancel it, or you've sent it to recovery department because there are so many dues that have been made that are overdue now, and the customer hasn't paid for them. So that is broadly your closure or recovery stage. So first, when you want to start with customer acquisition, which is onboarding and account details verification, customer management, and account maintenance, and lastly is your customer loss, either genuine closure or forced closure. So which of these 5 stages do you think adding the most to credit card losses with organizations?
Two I can think of. One is approving the customer applications. If that process is not strong enough, then you may end up issuing the credit cards to potentially fraudulent customers. And the third one, which is group customers by behavioral form rules. So again, the regular check on the authenticity of the transactions, that needs to be very strong as well.
So between the two, new customer onboarding and customer grouping or customer management, which is more Because if I have limited resources, in which phase do I want to keep the most amount of these resources, either technology or people or both?
I would say group customers by behavior and form rules,
Yeah, which is customer management.
customer management.
Okay. Any other views, anyone? Anybody else? Rightly said, and it is the customer management that requires a lot of our emphasis to be done for the simple reason because once the customer is with you, it's a credit card. You can use it multiple times within the same day itself. And therefore, the behavior has to be got to be monitored. Your rules have got to be established. Your checks and balances have got to be stronger so that you can pick up any anomaly and you can highlight it only to detect that it is a genuine or a not genuine transaction. How many of you have your bank's credit card that you can block through the app itself if there is a suspicious transaction? You can block the credit card on the app itself. As opposed to call the call center, be in the line, get more fraudulent activities done, and then have it. This is something that banks have done, yes. And most banks have given this as a feature that you don't want to spend your time in the, what should I say, in the queue. You'd rather, stop this by at your own end within minutes after you feel something suspicious. Banks also proactively do things, which is great. If you spent a credit card at a merchant and based on the records that the bank has, and if this credit card is suspicious because of the merchant's activity being suspicious, there's an email going to come to you from the bank saying that your card is prone to fraud and suspicion, and hence a block is requested. Kindly contact the bank on an urgent basis. So when you contact, they'll tell you the profile of the merchant. They'll tell you what you did. They'll warn you against it, and at that point, without any doubt, you can't say, "Okay, let me wait." Typical answer is, okay, let's block it, and you go ahead and block the card. That's a preventive measure as opposed to a reactive measure. And these are the kinds of services that banks are expected to do. And it's not that they invest in it, they invest in it along with MasterCard and Visa, who's going to help the bank provide this service. Yeah, because all the expense cannot be borne by the bank alone. But yes, doing a call, telling you about it, or sending out a communication to you, these are services that the bank should deploy. So obviously, account opening and therefore transaction fraud is the most popular, most common of them, which is customer management. So here, in terms of onboarding, what happens is there are application frauds. Sometimes you have bogus applications submitted from a person that does not even exist. The documents are submitted are fake. It used to happen quite a lot when you used to get a SIM card, and the SIM application had 6 out of 10 cases fraudulent information, no address written properly, no name of the person written properly. So if there was, it was used for a wrong purpose. It was difficult to find out the genuine source of it. So similarly here as well, and a lot of banks give unsecured lending against a credit card, and therefore you may not have a salary transfer, you may not have any relationship with the bank, and you still get a credit card. Nowadays, it's sophisticated. You can look at credit bureau, but earlier, no. And credit card sales teams used to just sell credit cards like hotcakes, telling you, take the credit card and it's free for life, or it is free for the first year, and use it for a certain amount of time, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year also. Take all the benefits and facilities, and next year cancel the card. And these are the kinds of things that were told by the sales teams because they wanted to get their targets done. So sometimes the documents also were, half taken, not completely adhered to, etc., and that created a problem. Account details, therefore, there was mail theft and your account or data was compromised. Imagine you are expecting a credit card and somebody is hacked into your systems and your address has been manipulated and your credit card is delivered, but to a wrong address and not your address. So there is a credit card with a wrong customer profile information, including telephone number, and you are not aware of it, but somebody is cheating on your behalf using your credit card. Okay. Transaction fraud, obviously, in terms of where the transaction was used, what was it done for, etc., etc. Account maintenance is basically, making sure that that your KYC details are adhered to. If there is a change in address, then those, or if there is a replacement card to be sent, or if it is your credit card is expired and a new card has got to be sent, then obviously those addresses are required for you to be given, and obviously needs to be updated. So as an example, on your transaction fraud, if there is a criminal travel agency, what this is a criminal travel agency because they are committing crimes of using credit cards, which they have stolen from people, and they book tickets on behalf of their customers. So what they do is they book the ticket on behalf of the customer. In return, they're not doing any credit transactions. They're only doing cash transactions from the customer. So it's a profit model, no risk model. And if one card is caught, then there are many such cards with them. They'll use the next card until the entire credit card gets depleted and they're caught, by which time then the entire business model for them fails. So once this happens, if you book the card using the stolen credit card with the online merchant, you look at everything okay, and the online merchant will ask for a few details and the credit card details. And through an OTP system, they will then approve the transactions and the ticket will be issued, in this case, the travel ticket. At the back end, guys, what's happening is the bank is now saying, hey, we need to, there is a transaction that has happened. The merchant has done the transaction and we have to approve the transaction, and they just do a basic check and the transaction gets approved. So sometimes if there's a discrepancy, normally it is about a week's time, in some cases about 4 days, but max a week, by which time the online merchant can contact the bank and can reverse the transaction. Yeah. But in many cases, it does not happen, and that's a problem. There are cases, when you do a credit card transaction, you must be 100% sure of, before you give the OTP through, on please check the amount. In many cases, what has happened, this was a tire replacement shop, and somebody had entered the amount of, say, I think it was about 1600 rupees for just one tire replacement or whatever that was, I don't know. But it was about 1600 rupees. And when it got entered, there was an extra zero into it and it was 16,000. The merchant said that they will replace or they will redo this work within a week's time. And after that, the merchant was never found to be there in the store and nobody was there to handle it. And the transaction did not get reversed. And as a result of which, it went on to the fraudulent transaction of this person. So if the online merchant is not reversing it, on the other hand, if there's a retail store who's charged you more, and they really, if it's a retail store, genuine brand, they will reverse it for you within 48 hours. Okay. So now when you look at a fraud and risk model, whose responsibility is it to invest in a fraud and risk model? Is it bank? Is it online merchant? Is it both? Or is it neither? What would you suggest?
Is bank as well as online merchant.
Good. Do you think both are happening? It should be both. I cannot agree more. But do you think that's happening? The answer is no. And who's not doing it? It's the online merchant or the bank?
Yeah.
The online merchants might not be doing it.
Correct. The online merchants are shrugging the responsibility off to the bank, and banks, because of time and investments, are not doing it the way they need to be done. It's too late otherwise, and hence your fraud and risk models can be jointly shared in terms of cost, but it should be the responsibility of the merchant as well as the bank together. Yeah. So what are the kinds? You can use advanced machine learnings or rule-based, but both are normally used because there are different phases of the credit card and not everybody can do everything. And therefore, rightly said, the responsibility should be both the online merchant as well as the bank. Should online merchants build their own programs? The answer can be not necessarily. It can be joint program that they will invest in with joint variables, which is going to benefit both of them, both as in the merchant as well as the bank, to detect and prevent frauds. And therefore, these skills required of data analytics and business analytics and fraud analytics should be there in both the merchant as well as at the bank. So with all the stages on the credit card life cycle, the different kinds of data that are available, huge amounts of data available, obviously. There's some basic data available. And when you say basic data, obviously this means the demographic profile of the customer, not in just name, but income as well, address stayed, what are their emails, telephone numbers, etc. The card number, the expiration date of the card, and the PIN number, something very, very secretive, but that's available. Transaction data, everything and anything about when transacted, how much transacted, which merchant, for what product, etc., etc. This is available on a day-to-day basis. So you can do a historical. Based on that, you can do a predictive analytics as well. Merchant data, and this merchant data is everything about the merchant. Is this merchant on the red alert, or is it normal, or what are the kinds of industries that they are targeting, etc. And then you have the other addresses like cookie information, or you have IP addresses, you have email information, etc. available as well. So with the plethora of information, we live in a world of information overload. And at that same point of time, we must be very mindful that we don't go overboard with the information, but we use information, again, which is relevant, using the reliable and valid model or thought process or logic that we spoke about a while ago. So if this is some kind of information, it's a cross tab or it's a pivot between income and age of the person. So the income is on your y-axis and age is on your x-axis. What is your interpretation on?
In general, there is a linear relationship, and there are two outliers.
Anyone else? So Rohit, can you please explain linear relationship? What do you mean by that?
More or less, we may be able to fit a straight line going through the income points compared to age. So
this is what you mean, right?
yeah. So as age increases, the income is likely to increase.
Correct.
And then there are two outliers. One 4,000. Yeah, those two.
And these are outliers because firstly, they are out of the line, number one, visually. And secondly, if you look at it carefully, a person with 25 years of age has an income of 4,000, and a person with 65 years of age has an income of 500. And therefore, they are caught as anomalies. Why? Because they are outside the line. So if you want to investigate, you will investigate these 2 points, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it is not possible for you to investigate the entire data set. And hence, the outlier test is very, very important as a starting point to look at the to look at the fraudulent transactions. So all fraudulent transactions that you're going to investigate into, you will investigate it at the portfolio level and not at the customer level. So what gets reported to the central bank also is portfolio health of the customer, not the individual level of the customer. As long as the portfolio is healthy, you're good to go. Moment the portfolio shows signs of risk, you got to investigate it downwards and deep dive and find out what is it that's causing a problem into the portfolio health. Yeah. So if you were to start your search operations, you will start with these 2 points and investigate them further. Yeah. And because they are outside the line, the deviation is huge. Yeah. So visual representation of data, very, very important for you to be able to make and therefore conclude what you need to. Now you can take a picture shot of this data set. It says I think there are 10 transactions and these are customer IDs. This is credit card data and this is their limit balance. Okay, this is gender. The gender code goes as 1 male, 2 female. Education, you can assume as 1 to 3, 1 being bachelor's, second being master's, and third being postgraduate or doctorate level. Marital status, 1 married, 2 not married, or 2 single. Yeah, and that is what you can assume. This is the age of the person, and then this is the last 6 months payment history of the person. Okay, now you can look at this, and what we will do is we'll put you into a breakout room. And what I want you to tell me is logically, what is the approach that you will take? And from the approach, which IDs, in your opinion, are fraudulent, therefore require further investigation? Yeah, clear? So if you've taken the picture shot, we'll put you into a group. How many of you are there? 13 of you are there. So we'll put you into 3 rooms, I think should do it. Yeah, we got 3 rooms and we'll put you into 3 rooms. And we'll give you about 20 minutes of time max to do this. And when we come back, we'll discuss this as a class. Okay. Raja and Pooja, you guys are not in my class. You've not attended the breakout rooms.
Sir, I'm getting some network issue again and again fluctuating because power problem. That's why I'm not able to join.
Everybody is back. Just 1 second, yeah, guys, just a minute. Guys, so let's start. Anybody who would like to, okay, anybody like to discuss what they did?
Yeah, I can go first.
Go ahead, please.
I'm representing Somyajit as well as Vaishali as well
Okay.
from this team. Uh, Sir, if you can bring up that screen.
I'm just doing that again.
Okay,
Yeah, just a
sure.
minute. 1 minute. Yeah. Okay, done it. Yeah.
So we had two strategies because we could not correlate the gender, education, or marital status directly with the transactions. So we had two strategies. One
When you
was
say we cannot, the data was not saying it, or you didn't have time to do it?
didn't have time
Didn't have
basically
time to do it. Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Okay.
There
cool.
could be some correlationships in that, but we didn't have time. So we used two strategies. One is we looked at transactions or the payment history over 6 months to see if there are any unusual transactions, unusually higher amount kind of transactions. And based on that, the 20414, the second, the row number 5 on Excel, that looks suspicious because the trend is going down in terms of payments, but then suddenly there is a spike of 28,000, which is very close to also the limit balance, 30,000. So that
Okay.
seems unusual. Then transaction number 4564, in that one as well, the very first amount, 10038, was almost is like an outlier. And the
Okay.
13 is also an outlier. So it doesn't give a clear cut trend. I mean, it could be like this person has used the card in the very first month and spent a lot, but
Spent a
then
lot. Okay.
doesn't look like a clear transaction. Um, and the other strategy which we used was to look at also the amounts in terms of so if you look at the very last transaction, the amounts are like very clean, the payment history like 1500, 1500, 3000. That is suspicious. Or 28390, the one but last, where suddenly from month number 3,
Mhm.
it's all clean numbers like 24,000, 10,000,
Whole
30,000.
numbers, you mean to say?
Whole
Okay.
numbers, yeah.
Mhm.
So that looks suspicious. Even the transaction number 7123,
Mhm.
6,000, 3,500, whole numbers. So that is suspicious in some ways. If they have stolen the card and used it as an ATM card to just draw some amounts and so on.
Okay. Cool.
Those were things which we thought of.
So based on your group's decision, these are the 2 points are IDs, or even this one is a
The
problem?
7123 as well.
7123 as well. Okay.
And 21659.
Okay. This as well. All right. Just out of curiosity, this zero you did not find this as a problem, huh?
We thought that this person has taken the card but never used it. So
Yeah.
just never used it. So we didn't want to flag it as a fraud.
Okay. Cool. Good. So you basically your group's analysis was on visuals.
Yes, the numbers
Okay.
which we see.
The visuals, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? The other 2 rooms?
Yeah, from group one, I guess we majorly focused on the limit balance and then what is the payment amounts that go. For example, if you look at the ID 20414, right? So it has a very 30,000 limit balance, and then it's in the month 6 we are almost exhausting everything, and it seems like an outlier because on the previous months it was not, so it was very less, right?
Okay.
So this one, and then I guess the ID number 8 in row 8. So
ID
283
number 8 in row 8. Okay.
yeah 23034. This one also in month 5, right? So it has a unusual amount, 11,040,
Mhm.
and this is again
Okay.
so this
Cool.
is again an outlier.
An outlier.
These two, yeah, these two were the ones. So we
So you
also considered
spotted as 2404 ID and 20 this one
23,000.
23.
Yeah.
These are the 2 spots that you did. One similar
Correct.
to the other team, one different.
Yeah, but other ones, like for example, the 12th row, right, 28390. This one actually has higher amounts, but again, if you look at the limit balance, right? So it already has 210,000 limit balance. So this
Correct.
and this looks like a repeated transaction, 24,000, 30,000. So we actually then remove this from our list.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. The last group. So again, Manmeet, you and your team did it based on visual analysis.
Correct, because there was not much, at least for other columns, right? Gender, education, marital status. We actually looked at visually, but we couldn't find any straight relation.
Okay, fair enough.
Just for 23034, like the marital status is like single and the age is 45, and this is like a little kind of some kind of risk maybe associated. Not sure.
Because he's single or because he's 45?
Yeah. Age and the marital status both.
Yeah, the risk
The
will
single
come
man.
from, the risk will come more from age, Vishwadeep, not from marital status. Yeah, because the higher age group, you are more closer to retirement age.
Right.
That's what, yeah.
Yeah, I think 23034 because of the marital status and that one transaction on payment 5 can
payment 5.
flag fraudulent.
Yeah, it's just to say Vishwadeep's point and your point also. Marital status less critical. Age, I would say, would be more critical to look at. Yeah, if I were to look at the demographics also. So that point of age is well taken. Okay, now what would be good to do, guys, if you were to analyze this data? Would you look at payments individually or would you look at a sum total of the payment?
No, we'll look at by demographics.
No. For payments, are you going to look at individually month on month or will you do some kind of a summation there?
Individual, I think, will be better because there might be real transactions among them. Maybe in the beginning, most probably in the beginning, because at the end it might be a little bit different. But I think we should do a month-on-month scenario, in my opinion.
The month-wise data will be more okay, I believe, compared to the summation.
Right.
Or it can be averaged out, maybe average of 6 months and then flagging anything above average.
So Somajit, what is better, average or individual months?
I think both, because average.
No, you have to start somewhere. So would you start with average or individual months?
Average, because that would give me a close point or a starting point. Average and then see which transactions are above average.
So I will take the average. Yeah. Parallelly, what I can do is I can take the total also. But between the total and the average, which is a better number?
Average.
Average is a better number any day. So we are not going to look at total. Yeah. So that's my average. And now after the average, what will I do?
Maybe the variance difference of each payment from the average.
Correct. So I can calculate a standard deviation.
Right.
Yeah. So when I do a standard deviation, I can do it like this.
But should we consider standard deviation for the transactions where the limit balance is same?
Okay, that is additional analysis. We are starting this right now. Yeah.
Okay.
You might decide I don't want standard deviation. I'll just look at deviation of each point with average and to first spot the anomaly. But that variance factor will come in. Okay. So how much of a variance you want to look at, and for that usually standard deviation helps.
Yeah.
Now that you're looking at the standard deviation, of course, there are various ways to look at it. A good starting point, a quick starting point rather, would be keep your limits. So lower limit and your upper limits. What I can say here is my lower limit is anything average minus standard deviation, and my upper limit is average plus standard deviation. And now what I'm spotting is I will check each data point within the limits to find out if there is any anomaly there. So of course we can do conditional formatting, but in the first row, because it is this quickly, which one is an anomaly? Is there any one that's an anomaly? It is this point. Clear? Right? Because it is outside the range.
Yeah.
Second, the negatives are okay, the positives are 17,000. So this data point becomes an anomaly to look at. Yeah, which interestingly was appealing to the naked eye as well, because you guys both two teams spotted it based on this one only. And now it gets slightly better confirmed based on some structure to analysis as opposed to just visual appeal. Okay. Number 3 is obviously this one. Number 4 is this one, which your teams had, one of the teams had talked about it, 4564, and you had also said this as an outlier, 10,000. Now that is confirmed. This one again, obviously 1040. One of the teams had talked about it with this being spotted as an anomaly. For this one, it's this number, right? And for this one, I think it is again this number. Now, 0, there are ways and means of looking at it. A prudent fraud and risk team will say, I want to find out whether this is still active because 6 months have passed. And the limit is not less. So obviously the need for having a credit card would have been better established because this person was given a limit balance of 300,000. What is of suspicion is the age group of 29 years of age. Because if you look at similar age groups, 26 and 30 or 27, the limits are less. Yeah, in fact, this person has got the second highest limit after 390,000. So that the age factor more than anything else will drive it. And I will say that this therefore seems, based on this number and based on the history done, I will force mark it as a suspicious case or as an investigative case. Somebody might turn around and say, why are you worried about it? It's 0 spends. But today's 0 spends, I want to find out what's going on behind it. Why is it a 0 spend? Okay, because of 6 months. And somebody might say, let's watch for a 3 more month period, which is okay. But the rationale has to be done as to whether you're differing, whether you're investigating, or whether you're just ignoring. Okay, between the three as fraud and risk, which is the better argument, guys? Investigate, defer, or ignore?
Investigate.
Investigate,
because
right?
we cannot say right now it's fraudulent.
Correct. And therefore, but you will get a little agreement when we look at the credit limit or limit balance and age together, right? And we've done a relative age analysis with limit balance because this seems to be a question mark, appears to be a question mark. So as fraud and risk analysts, prudent analysts, we will investigate. Do you think senior management will say no after this argument? Probably not. So the rationale has to be very strong. Okay. The next one, obviously, so I would include this in the investigation bucket that I will do, or list that I'm doing. The next one is obviously, this is a problem. Okay. And I can, this is a problem. And then I can also, in the last one, this is obviously a problem, and I can pull up 3,000 as well, because I can say it is close to the cutoff of 3.7. So I want to find out this as well and investigate this further. You might turn around and say it's not very close, it's okay. And that logic, I leave it up to you. But therefore, this will definitely be taken up. this may be. Is this clear? So now what you're doing is you're doing a investigation at a higher level. And what has happened is, interestingly, every ID has to be investigated, but not all 6 months, months which appear to be an anomaly. Because if you do all 6 months, it's going to take much more time. So for this ID number, you have to look at transaction month 5 for this 6, etc., etc. So you specifically know what you want to investigate and find out if it's a genuine transaction or a fraudulent, transaction that you want to further investigate. Makes sense, guys?
Yeah.
So of course, and now that you want to do correlations, if you want to study correlations, you will study correlations between, you can study it with a demographic variable. So which one do you want to take? You may want to say age and limit balance, right? Somebody said. Correct? So if I want to see age versus limit balance, how do I see that? I will look at a correlation analysis very quickly. And I'm going to select it between these two. First row is a label, and I do that. And the relationship is 0.4. So is it good or bad? The relationship, the R value here is 0.4. And therefore, what does it tell me?
It's not a strong correlation.
Not a strong, though positive, but not a strong correlation. So should I be worried? The answer is no. So now that I have done this, should I be investigating 29, this particular case because of the age?
No.
Not at all, because it's not a cause of worry. So I will remove this and I will say, let's not investigate it. Clear? Got it?
Yeah.
And then you can decide what you want to investigate. Maybe you want to do a correlation between average and maybe age, or you can do it with any of the demographics to be able to see the relationship between two variables that you are studying. Yes. Okay. Any questions, anybody?
So I have a question. In real banking industries, is this probably a similar activity which they do, or it's more to do with automated algorithms or automated rule based?
Not everybody has sophisticated systems, but every bank will first start with this, which is called as descriptive analytics.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the credit card numbers are not in hundreds or thousands, and they will do it at the segment level. Okay. And they will, for example, segment level means those credit cards that have come in the last 6 months, those credit cards that have been with us last 2 years, etc.
Okay.
But yeah, this is always the starting point for a bank, for a financial institution. And there are many ways to do it. This is a simpler way. I could actually do cutoffs and limits based on past trends or established trends and say anybody, based on my experience and the history that I have, anybody in the first 6 months who has I can establish this average myself instead of the data telling me. If the spends are anywhere more than 10,000, then they need to be caught, because history says you can't spend so much, especially with your limit balances this much. So now you're getting into a rule. Okay.
Sir, also the 5th month has maximum suspicious transactions. So do we need to investigate more on the 5th month?
Correct. Good observation, because amongst everything, the 5th month has the most transactions out of whatever 10 that you had. fifth month has at least 4 of them picked out. So what went wrong in month 5th can be further investigated. Yeah, root cause analysis. Good observation.
Could it be like a security issue on the whole credit card system in that month?
Yes, could be. And then you can link it easily if it is that straightforward.
It could be some shopping season also, right? It could be
Yeah,
other
if
things.
there is seasonality as well. So is there a shopping season out there? Correct. And then you can try and look at it in terms of who has done this most. Is there gender-wise any kind of preferences or gender-wise kind of transactions? And yes, they appear to be more female-centric. Yeah. So female-centric, month 5, and obviously you can look at the age group that you are holding, and the age group does not matter. It is across all age groups. So festive season, gifting season, if it is fine, but if it is not, then that is an anomaly that requires you to look into it. Yes. Any questions, anybody? Can I stop sharing? So there are 3 kinds of analysis that are normally done. One is called as descriptive analytics. The second one is called as prescriptive analytics. And the third one is called as predictive analytics. Any idea what is descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive?
Descriptive will talk about what has happened already.
Correct.
It will just show the past data or the trends.
Right.
Prescriptive is the last stage. What should be done? What's the recommendation? What's the strategy? And predictive would be the one where you're trying to predict what will happen. You are trying to forecast.
Right.
And in diagnostic, we are doing the RCA.
In diagnostic. So diagnostic is which one? Predictive, prescriptive, or prescriptive?
Sorry, come again.
Descriptive, prescriptive, or predictive? Where are you doing in RCA?
In diagnostic.
Yeah, but which of these is diagnostic? Descriptive, predictive, or prescriptive?
It will be descriptive.
In descriptive only.
Descriptive. Because firstly we have to check like what exactly happened, and then based on that we have to do some kind of RCA, and that is like fall under the diagnostic.
So can I say RCA is a critical component of prescriptive?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And
what
RCA
action we can take?
What action we can take to prevent something, and that's predictive.
So in predictive, we just do the historical analysis, like what happens and what will be the future.
So it's not just, it is a big one, right? Based on past behavior, predicting the future. Right. So why do you do root cause analysis? So that you prevent it from occurring again, isn't it?
Right.
And therefore, with RCA, yes, with some completed.
With some means with some necessary actions.
With some proof that this action warrants resources.
Right. And
hence, there is a common thread, and that is analysis in all 3 of them. If you are predictive, if your fraud mitigation is going wrong, please check the descriptive analytics. Maybe your variables are wrong. Maybe the prescriptions are wrong. You should be going leftward, you're going rightward. So all the 3 are integrated. The exercise that we did just now, was it descriptive, prescriptive, or predictive?
Descriptive.
Okay. And
diagnostic.
If we are doing some kind of analysis, and further, if you are suggesting something, then it will be the prescriptive.
So we are doing prescriptive also because we have to analyze these cases and come up with a strategy. So we are doing prescriptive and descriptive. And why are we doing all this? To prevent fraud. So it's predictive as well. Right. So in a sense, we did all three there. Because we added correlations also. Okay. So any analysis, including fraud and risk, involves you to do all three together. Clear, guys?
Yeah, it's clear.
Great. Wonderful. Now, do you want a quick break or for say 5-7 minutes or do you want to continue? What do you want to do? Should we give you a quick 5-minute natural break? Yeah.
We
Okay.
can
Let's
take a
give it
break.
to you.
Yeah, 5
Let's
minutes.
give you. Yeah. Let's give you a quick 5-minute natural break and then let's come back and continue. Okay. All right, guys, you back? All right, let's continue, guys. So after having done the exercise, let's understand the models a bit more. Two kinds of models, whether you say rule-based or machine-based, or real-time and offline models, as they are called. As the name would suggest, real-time is always beneficial and advantageous because you're able to, spot the anomaly and also, correct it on the spot itself. The problem with this is it can disrupt, customer engagement, customer service, satisfaction, because it kind of pauses the smoothness of the transaction. That could be a problem. But if you educate the customer, it will help you save your losses in the future. Offline is obviously the customers don't get distracted or interrupted, and you are able to prevent the losses from happening. Now, which of the two, real time or offline, is predictive which of the two will help in detecting frauds, and which of the two will help in preventing frauds? Yeah, detecting and preventing frauds. Which ones will help you do that?
So real time can help detect the fraud immediately.
So detect or prevent?
Prevention is more important than, means if once we detect, then definitely we can prevent as well.
Right. So in real time, if you spot an anomaly, you can prevent it, right? A current transaction is having a problem. So what will you do? What is the benefit of having a real time problem?
Yeah, we can try to stop that transaction.
Correct. We should try to stop it, and therefore real time is more preventive, and offline is more detective. Yeah. Okay. So both will help you do the job better, but this is more and that is more. And therefore, what kind of model you think, financial institutions should deploy, real time or offline or both? Obviously, both models should they deploy, because both are going to help you pick together a robust detection model, which is preventive and which is detective as well. So credit card frauds obviously are occurring, and banks need to make sure that you are going to come up with a robust system to look at stuff. So if you have an offline model, obviously you process them in batches. Gone are the days when you'll do it end of the day or end of the week. You can do it every hour, but your losses, you have always gone ahead and not detected and therefore not prevented anything that has occurred within that 1 hour of time period. And it is more of a lag effect than of a lead effect. It's more, past than it is more futuristic. So that is what happens, but it can definitely work on stuff, requires lesser investments, work on your data on an every fixed time period to kind of, come up with anomalies, and definitely gives you a lot of inputs to prevent future frauds from happening. And obviously based on current detections. The challenges of offline models are that predictions are not available for real-time purpose. It does not happen. So if you've just signed up as a new customer, your behavior is not known until you do a transaction. And based on that, your predictive model gets developed. Real time obviously has its own advantages. As we say, everything is detected on a real time basis. And if you can detect it on a real time basis, it is more of a, it is more of a preventive measure. And if it's more of a preventive measure, it really becomes essential or important for you to deploy a real-time mechanism as well. Now, real-time serves as a lot, in many cases, real-time serves as a red alert. You cannot ignore or should not ignore this red alert, because this red alert will help you detect as well as prevent any kinds of frauds that exist. The challenges is obviously requires more investments, they're more complex, requires more skill to be able to use it. And you should be able to, time to action should be very fast the moment a real-time anomaly is spotted. So agility and flexibility, very, very important for real-time basis. Don't change the policy or process, but spot the gaps and try to bridge them maximum, unless the gap itself is a flaw. So if your maker checker system is flawed, then that requires an immediate attention to be looked at. We'll come back to the case studies, as our final point. Let's move on and talk a little bit more. So when you implement an integrated approach, you're going to look at an innovative approach that you want to look at, looking at all and sundry possibilities of your data. So your roles of people involved in the fraud management or the fraud development model is the RACI framework. You must want to ensure that people who are involved are responsible, they are accountable, they are consulted, and they're informed. Okay, of course, these words may sound integrated, but there's a difference. So what do we mean by responsible here? So I'm going to say, just as an example, that Vishwadeep is responsible for fraud management. What am I saying? Vishwadeep is responsible for fraud management. What am I saying? And now I say
Reliability
Ajay,
and availability of the tool.
Okay, now just hear me out. Now Vishwadeep is responsible for fraud management. Ajinkya is accountable.
Yeah, accountable. Maybe it's like means Ajinkya will be more, what you can say. He's the primary person who is taking care of those things, but maybe he can share the responsibility with me.
So I'm saying Ajinkya is accountable, Vishwadeep is responsible. Now a fraud occurs. Whose head should I catch?
I think Ajinkya is the one
Ajinkya.
answerable.
Accountable.
Yes.
Accountable.
Accountable.
Yeah.
The primary person should be the accountable.
And Ajinkya says, it's not my fault. It is this person that I got on board last month, and it's all Vishwa's fault. So then
he is the responsible, so he have to take care of it.
who is responsible?
Ajinkya.
Ajinkya, but then who is accountable? So accountability means whether you've done it or not, you own up to it. So though Vishwadeep is reporting into Ajinkya, and it
In other words, we can say this responsible will be the subset of accountability.
Thank you very much. But who is front ending?
Accountable person. Oh, sorry, a responsible person.
No, accountable person.
No, means the person who is directly handling the things, he will be the responsible for the act. But
So-
maybe somewhere, maybe someone had shared that responsibility, not the responsibility, his accountability in terms of the responsibility. He shared those things with them.
Okay, now there is a CEO of the company and there's a central bank. There's a fraud that has happened. Who's accountable for? And there's a chief risk officer. Who's accountable? The CEO, the chief risk officer. Who should central bank look into?
The CEO is accountable in this case. and
Accountability.
the
Correct.
risk officer would be responsible.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So CEO cannot say, I have nothing to do with it. It's the risk manager's job. Yeah. So you see the difference between responsible and accountable. Sometimes the person who's responsible is also accountable, but that's a rare case. Otherwise, you must have these two roles clearly defined as to who is responsible and who is accountable. Okay, consulted.
Means we can consult to anyone. Like this is like a RACI matrix, right?
Right.
So means consulting can be anyone, like to whom we consult. Maybe the manager or
yeah. So consulting can be anybody. Absolutely correct. Is it compulsory? Or is it optional?
No, it's optional.
It's optional. Well said. And informed.
This is also like means we can inform to someone if it's required.
Who do we have to inform?
Maybe the responsible person,
No.
accountable person,
No.
and the person like a
Central
manager or
bank
maybe the
and
team.
Stakeholders in this particular case.
Thank you very much. The stakeholders, in our case, the biggest stakeholder is the central bank. And then the shareholders, and then the customers, and then the employees. Clear? So when you discuss fraud analytics in a management review meeting, the management has to be informed. Yeah, or the board of directors have got to be informed. So is it clear, guys? Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And it's dynamic. Just because you have a Vishwadeep responsible today does not mean he can't be accountable tomorrow. The roles can change. Yeah, so your fraud model should be iterative based on pre-processing, processing, and post-processing, and your roles of the fraud people, of the team handling it should have clear charters laid out with regards to responsibility, accountability, consulted, and informed. Clear?
Yes.
Now, banks have given you a lot of education now, and you must have heard these things being said by the banks. Watch your credit card, never carry all your cards, never share passwords, etc., has been said. And that is it. I'm going to share something that I've got. It is the fraud strategy of a bank. And this bank is the fraud strategy of a bank, which is obviously here. And this was presented at their global conference that was held in terms of, as a brand, as a bank, what is their commitment to fraud going to look like? It's only gotten better. This is something that I had my hands on and I said I will share it, only obviously for academic reasons. So 2018, their strategic initiatives and observations were new products that they wanted to launch, not customer products, but that is going to help detect and prevent frauds better. So that's what they did. They came up with a dispute case management tool between the vendor and the customer that the bank would look into. They enhanced the authentication with regards to the OTPs that they came up with in terms of how quickly it was done. And all transactions, initially they said above a certain amount required an OTP confirmation. And now probably in all the cases across countries, you must have an OTP before you can authorize a transaction. Recent trends is what they talk about, which is email compromising or phishing attacks, and that obviously is on the rise. Now they look at the fraud life cycle, which is the analytics. They develop the strategy. They notify the customer through the early detection systems, and they are getting recovery done very fast. After the anomaly has been spotted. So time to close is something that they have worked hard on. So they're saying strategy developed, rules created on high risk merchants, high velocity transactions, and high fraud scores provided by vendor and associations. So what is this bank's strategy? This bank's strategy is about fivefold. They want to enhance their analytics in terms of detecting and preventing frauds through descriptive, prescriptive, and predictive analytics. What are they doing? They're upgrading their fraud models, and so they have a combination of both rule-based as well as machine learning-based models. It is reducing the cardholders' point of sale and helping them to detect and obviously making them more safe and secure. So their fraud rules and scoring is also getting much more relevant, much more valid, much more timely. And they're saying they communicate to the customer in a very timely manner, which reduces frauds. Their security operations have enhanced in terms of what they do. They identify employees using cards outside of policy, which they should not. And as a product development, they've come up with chip cards across the board, 3D secure tokenization, and this is going to help detect and prevent frauds better. So this is the 5-pronged strategy that they have deployed. They also talk about how they're going to help the customer with regards to a customer contact strategy. How will they benefit the customer? What are they going to do? And again, this normal spiel. Today it's normal, but 5-6 years ago, there was a deliberate effort that had to be done to detect and to educate your customer in terms of types of fraud, including phishing emails, because that is something the customer needs to be very, very careful about. So the best practices that they have followed with regards to the detecting, preventing frauds, and they explain that here. And they are, sharing some best practices that they are talking to the cardholders and educating them about, which is their card and PIN, best practices on data management on your computer, reviewing your accounting profile, transactions, including they were the ones who first started educating and saying, look at the amount before you authorize it through your OTP, and obviously shop safely online. Okay, so that's the fraud and risk strategy that the bank deploys. Now let's look at this classic case study again in the fraud world. It is a UK-based case study. You can take a picture if you want of this. And what we will do is we will try and answer these questions. How would the fraud, first of all, let's look at the second part of the question first. Of the available data, what data will you identify that you need to use to detect and prevent fraud? And how can this have been caught, in terms of their processes and systems? And then the last one is, what kind of models would you like to use, real time or offline? So variables, how do you think the fraud can be caught in terms of processes? Clearly shows that there is a process flaw here. And would you deploy a real time or an offline model here? Yeah. So please take a picture if not already taken. Okay, and we'll give you about 15 minutes to discuss this as a group, and then we come back and discuss this as a class. So how many do I have? You want bigger groups or smaller groups?
I think 2 group is enough, sir, right?
Yeah, so bigger group. Hey, Rajan, you're back. Good. Bigger groups or smaller groups?
Bigger group, sir.
Bigger groups, okay. So I will make it into 2 groups.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll give you 15 minutes to discuss this, and let's come back and discuss this as a class then. So Rajan, you're okay to be in the group now, yeah? All sorted at your end.
Yes, all sorted, sir.
Okay. And Pooja, I don't know where you are because you did not participate in the first group. Hopefully you will be now here, be able to, contribute in the breakout room. Okay. All right. So let's start with the second part of the question, which is what is the data that you would require to prevent or to detect and prevent frauds? Yeah. Or the variables that you would consider.
The transactions amount.
The amount of transactions, okay, as in the amount of the transaction, right?
Right.
Okay.
Origin, from where the transactions happen.
So
Location.
source as
Source
well
and
as
destination.
destination, both correct. What else? What about volume of transactions also becomes important?
Yes. What the frequency is there?
Yeah,
Correct.
frequency and volume.
Frequency and so frequency and volume, okay. Anything else? And on what they are spending, you don't want to catch that. Spending on what from the merchant data? Is it on, and these guys have spent on what? They've spent on luxurious items.
Luxurious things. Yes.
Yeah. So if you're continuously spending on such kind of not one, not two, not but many villas and first class travel and 5-star holidays, that should have been caught, right? And that
That is the
amounted,
alarming point.
yes, 17 million pounds, 32,000 credit cards. Yeah. Anything else?
No.
Multiple countries also involved while
Yeah.
transferring.
So we said source as well as destination, and this is a case of money laundering, isn't it?
Yes.
So obviously your placement, integration, all of that is involved here. There are multiple transactions happening for various times for luxurious items. So all of these become important for you to look into. Yeah. Now, what is the problem with this case study, with this credit card bank? Yeah, that is my answering my first question. How can fraud be caught? Yeah.
Maybe their detection systems.
Yeah.
Or understanding what sort of spends or amount of transaction.
Yeah.
Not flagged.
Correct. So the detection system in the banking language, we call it as maker checker system is flawed. And this, it can not just be money laundering, it could be insider threat threat as well. Your employees can be involved in this, because otherwise, how can you overlook at something like this, isn't it? Yeah. So they need to come up with a automated system that flags these kind of red alerts, and that goes right to the top so that everybody in the chain of command picks it up and obviously acts upon it. Anybody, any other points? Then let's move to the last question. Real time or on offline or both? Both. And what would be your analytics that you're going to be relying on? Yeah, descriptive, predictive, or prescriptive?
All three, sir.
Descriptive first because of the transactions and
descriptive first and then prescriptive and then predictive. So all three, as also somebody else said. Yes, correct. All three analytics will be required through a combination of real time as well as offline models. Clear? So two kinds of frauds were visible here. One was your what should I say? One was your money laundering, and the other one was on insider trading. Yeah. Any other questions? Anything you wish to add?
The OTP mechanism could have helped them.
Yeah.
But then they also had those 40 odd mobile phones. So they may have done a major scam in terms of even getting more SIM cards and associating those with credit cards. So in this particular case, even the other demographics data, like how many, like what's the status of the mobile number which is associated with that credit card?
Correct.
I think that kind of information might have helped as well.
Correct, absolutely. And that goes as part of descriptive analytics and the variables that you choose in the offline models that you're deploying.
Yeah.
Okay. So a very laid back approach, because I don't know what was your reaction, guys, but when I first read it, it says caught by chance. During a routine anti-terror check, police caught them, and with 40 whatever odd mobile phones, or mobile top-up cards. And that led to this investigation. Otherwise, it was business as usual.
It could be more of insider trading.
Yeah, it is insider trading for sure.
Because 7 years, they're not able to detect anything.
They have not detected anything until this time. So definitely insider trading. Yeah. So between insider trading and money laundering, it's inside and why? Because your processes and procedures are not strong enough. Your maker checker policy is not strong enough. Cool. Any other questions? Any clarifications? Okay. Now let's move on to as I had promised, I have access to your platform and I have access to your project, right? So this is where your project resides. Let's quickly go through your project overview that you're expected to work on. So this is obviously a project. You are going to play the role of a risk analyst and you're performing exploratory data analytics, which is basically descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive in that sense, because you'll be doing all the three is what I do, because you're also being asked to draw actionable insights and interpret the results. So your assessment criteria is analysis of the predictive variables, about 18 marks, 12 marks on some additional analytics that you want to do, and then your insights and recommendations, and then your choice of the model. Vishwadeep, I think this is what you were discussing in your room, which is a better model and on what criteria. That's your logic. So, please, in the past, people have done a fantastic job, but I had to cut marks for the simple reason that the template was not followed. So please follow the template religiously. Otherwise, you will unnecessarily lose out on marks, and that's not what we want. Post pictures from your outputs, either Excel or Python, but just don't dump the pictures. Please write a line or two below it in terms of what this data is telling you in terms of interpretation and action. Yeah. So your business problem and understanding, you are, it's a bank and it's a credit card company of the bank based out of the US. And they have found that they are facing payment defaults in their various credit card categories. The reasons could be multiple, but they are not able to pinpoint what could the reason be. So as a risk analyst, you're expected to work on this data, and that's the data set that you have, which you want to work on it. So in terms of what you want to do as part of your first question, there are, I think, 6 sub-questions within that. The first one is you'll find the percentage of default versus non-default customers. A straight analysis is I don't think this is a problem for anybody. You'll just take that filter and then show the percentages and plot the results as a bar plot. If you forget to visualize it, you will lose marks. If you do any other fancy plot, you will lose marks. Follow, because it's given to you to follow a bar plot. Yeah. Then find the percentage of default with regards to sex, which is gender, and again, bar plot it. Then with education, then with age, then with marriage, and then with regards to when your pay equals to 0, and that's the filter. So using basic filters, you got to present your outputs, and you got to visualize it using a bar plot. A straightforward question, please be very mindful. Do your percentage, because the answer is in percentage. Don't give me values.
So just one query here related to question number 4. So this there are three levels are there, level 1, 2, and 3. So in level 1, we have to select like age less than is equal to 28.
Correct.
Second bucket will be like from 29 to 51.
No, it
right?
is, yeah, 29 to 51.
And
So it is more than 28, no? More than 28 and less than
Correct.
51.
So 28 to 51, and level 3 is the
More than
rest.
51.
Correct. The rest.
No, so first group is like age less than is equal to 28, right? So we have to consider up to 28, first group, correct?
Correct.
And the second one is start from 29 to
Correct.
51. And
So
the
if somebody,
third one is
so
like
if
greater than 51.
Yeah, so if somebody is 28.5 years of age, please round it off to 29.
Okay.
So Vishwadeep, here we have to take more than 28, second level. More than 28
second
and
level,
less than 51.
Yeah, less than 51. And the third one is like we have to consider
More than 51.
Yeah, the post this age, the customer are known as level 3. So means 51 and greater
Plus,
will
51
fall
plus.
in 3.
Yeah.
Okay, 51 plus. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So good. So this is fine. That then your second part of the story is let's now filter the data for good customers, and customers who have not delayed any payments for the month is what is considered as defining a good customer. So obviously month on month is going to be looked at, and there is no default in payments, and that's how you're going to start your analysis. Find the percentage of default versus non-default customers across good customers. Plot the results as a bar plot. Find the percentage of customers with regards to sex, education, marriage against selected demographic variables, but default, non-default after you have done your filter. In the second case, find percentage of default. So it's like a pivot, or also called as a cross tab of defaulters by gender, defaulters by education, and defaulters by marriage. Number 4, based on the above analysis, now infer. So I would have given more marks to inference, but it's a 4-mark question. So please infer. Based on the analysis, add recommendations and suggestions. So don't write everything, write which is very peculiar, which is prominent with regards to how you want it to be actioned. And since it's a 4-mark question, don't spend a lot of time in talking about the obvious. Provide some insights and recommendations from it as well. Last and final, between the two models that you have, you got to select which model should we go ahead with, obviously based on the rationale that you have, and based on that, you got to select the model that you are suggesting, obviously along with why. It's a 6-mark question.
So one more query here related to this 4.1. So here we have to calculate only the recall or some other factors like this accuracy and the other factors as well.
All the based on the factors, the 3 factors, based on the factors that you are going to talk about. But yeah, find which model is having a better recall score. That's what it's asking you to do. So your decision, Vishwadeep, is going to be based on
recall only.
Correct.
Okay, sir. Then.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say pretty interesting, relevant to the industry, to the banking world. And when we looked at this project, we said, should we focus on the analytics or interpretation? I think this one gets a good balance of the two, but the focus is on interpretation. And please be very, very mindful and careful of what you do. The kind of talks and discussions that we've been doing in class will help you support your findings. I don't see this as a challenge for anybody. All of you should be able to, at least the ones that I know that I interact with in class, should do very well on the project. Yeah. And when in our last class, we'll be also talking about the final exam. Any questions?
No, sir.
Awesome. Perfect.
No, sir.
Okay. Now, there is a feedback form that I would want you to fill up, please, as we exit. But before we do that, we've completed about 50%, 2 sessions. How are these 2 sessions, guys? Overall?
So very interactive session.
Excellent, sir. Interactive.
Interactive sessions. Good. Yeah. And any other comments? So we are understanding concepts better.
Yeah, because of this interactions, it's better to understand the concepts and to grasp it.
Okay. Rohit, were you also saying
We are
something?
also relating it to actual industry, right? So that makes it real. I mean, we are able to sort of relate the concepts to the actual how the banking or financial institutions would be going about these things. So
Okay, good. So we are on the right path as far as the delivery is going.
yeah,
Right, sir.
Okay, cool, perfect. All right. So what we will be doing in our next two sessions is we're going to be talking about risk, the other side of fraud and risk, which is also very, very important. And that is what we'll be talking for not other class, which is tomorrow itself. Okay. Now, if you can just take a few moments and fill out the feedback form. There are 12 of you here. I want all 12 of you to give your feedback and then we shall exit. And if you've given your feedback, let me know so I know that the counts are done.
Yeah, done from my end.
Done. So 2 done.
It's done, sir.
Okay, 3. Oh no, Vishwadeep, I counted you. So you and Somajit have done. So 2. 10 more left.
So, sir, just one query
Go
related to the
ahead.
TE question. So, sir, TE will be like based on some descriptive or some scenario based?
Okay, of the 2 or whatever 3 questions, majority will be application based and 1 will be concept discussion.
Okay.
Done, sir.
3 done, yeah. So so that's how it is going to be. Because it's fraud and risk analytics. In some cases, of the 2 or 3, I don't know how many you'll have. I have not set the paper, but majority will be application doing, and you'll also have a couple of questions on concept explanation. So there'll be a scenario, and you'll be able to talk about the concept.
Okay. So do we have any past sample papers? So at least we can check like these are the, the way the
No, there is no sample papers, but we will be discussing the questions, the kind of questions, more importantly, the kind of answers that I'm looking for.
Sure, sir.
Okay. So I think 3 done.
done from my side as well. This is Rohit.
Rohit, I think we counted you earlier as well. So 3 done still.
Rajan also is done, sir.
4, 5. Yeah, 4. Vaishali done 5. Manmeet done 6. 6, 6, 6. The others are left. Pooja, I think she's on the beach, so we will exclude her. What about the rest? 7. Kirti, Kumar. I think if you, 2 of you, if you do it, then we are home. Kirti, Kumar. All right, I think they will do it. If not, I think we've got a good sample. Now, guys, take care. Have a good evening, whatever is left of it, and we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah. Thanks, Kumar.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
Thanks. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank
See you
you.
tomorrow.
Good night.